Good evening, and you're listening to Get Real with Ralph from the studios of WLIP 1050 AM in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and simulcast via YouTube at GetRealWithRalph.com. I am your humble host, Ralph Nudi, with a face for radio and a voice for newsprint, and I have in my studio here today the well-known strangers. We spent the first hour of the program talking about their musical journey thus far, and they're going to play one more song for us here, and then we're going to have a discussion about some causes that are near and dear to the hearts of the band members as well as myself. Here are the well-known strangers in the studio live playing voices.
Fellow defenders of decency, take care of those knights who fight in the name of charity. The feeders, the cowards, they move through the shadows among us, and they won't back down. The killing, the raping, the selling, back breaking. We've got to united send out a call. Tear up the walls and rip through the streets. Find those poor souls who never had a choice to speak. There are voices bouncing off the walls of padded rooms, wondering, is anyone out there? Voices stuck in the silence of casual conversations. Don't be blind. Somewhere a father goes out looking for his baby girl. She'll never come home again. A mother's son now looking for honest work in the wrong places. They have been pillaging our innocence through the and rip through the streets. Find those poor souls who never had a choice to speak. There are voices bouncing off the walls of padded rooms, wondering, is anyone out there? Voices stuck in the silence of casual conversations. Don't be blind, yeah.
Wow. I mean, Every time I hear that song, I get a little tear in my eye. For those of you listening that have never heard this song before, it's about human trafficking. And 2 years ago, I didn't even really understand that human trafficking existed, in at least not at the level that it exists here in the world. And somebody brought a article to me about it, and I read it, and I've been consuming more information on it ever since. And then about 90 days ago, I watched a movie, a documentary on YouTube called Operation Toussaint, which is about the group Operation Underground Railroad, which rescues children in foreign countries from human trafficking. It was started by a man by the name of Timothy Ballard, who was former FBI agent, former Department of Homeland Security member, and he started the group when a boy that had gotten kidnapped, who was actually a U.S. citizen but living in Haiti, disappeared, and he found out that there was no way he could turn it into a U.S. case, and there was no way that he could get jurisdiction to go and rescue this child. And the short story is that he quit his job and started this organization to rescue children. But human trafficking comes in so many different forms. It comes in so many different countries. It affects so many different age groups. And one of the facts that nobody realizes is that slavery has been outlawed across the entire world for over 100 years. But there are more people enslaved in the world today than there were when slavery was legal. Think about that for a minute. There are more people in slavery today than there were when slavery was actually legal. And the statistics run somewhere. Do you know what the numbers are on people that are in human slavery altogether, Betsy?
No, I'm not sure. It was really profound.
Like 30 million, I thought?
There are about 30 million people that are enslaved in one way, form, or another. That includes people that are enslaved for debts that they owe, that are in labor camps and everything else. There are 6 million people that are in the sex trade that are enslaved, 2 million of which are children. That's a pretty sobering number. I have here with me the well-known Strangers manager. His name is Victor Serra. And Victor's a former police officer, and he's sitting in on this along with Betsy. Betsy, tell me what inspired you to write this particular song, and how did you become aware of this problem in the first place?
We had a show at Memorial Hall in Racine, and we were asked to play for a benefit that was raising money for the cause, and we wanted to do something, a little more. We started researching what it was all about, and we wanted to do something a little more than just play. So we chose to write a song about all of the things that are going on. And it's hard to put it into one song, 1 3-minute song, because what we've learned was so profound, and it's something that we are continuing to be a part of. And would love to be more involved, because I know it's kind of like it's a hard business to it's a hard thing to fix. And one thing that we've learned while we were researching things to write the song about is the people who are involved, the mostly girls who are involved, get involved and then don't want to come out of it. They have a very comfortable lifestyle, and I think that's one of the hardest parts about fixing a situation like this is they've grown accustomed to a lifestyle that is fine for them, and they don't even realize what they could have in life, and they're happy the way things are. So,
and that specifically goes to, I would say, the sex trade in the United States. And the young women that are involved in it. Of course, Victor, you know a lot of statistics about the local area and the I-94 corridor, the area between Chicago and Minnesota, right here, Kenosha. Kenoshans that are listening, we're in the middle of a major hub. Victor, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, at least 2 years ago when we started this, we were asked to play, like Betsy said, at the Coalition Against Human Trafficking, and we performed in January 2 years ago. The band did, and they performed that song for the first time. And then a year later, they asked us to come back for another benefit, and we did a video for that song as well. But, and I'm probably off beat now with your question.
That's all right. We got plenty of time.
What was the question again? I've lost myself.
I was wondering if you could shed some insight into the
corridor,
the I-94
yeah,
corridor, the Kenosha Racine area, and how this has become a hotbed for sex trafficking.
And getting back to that, 2 years ago, the FBI spent more money in this area than any other area in the United States, believe it or not.
Wow.
So, and that was a fact that we worked with Carrie Hemmig. Yeah. She was the head of the coalition 2 years ago. She's no longer, but she still keeps in touch. Neil Lofi, Investigator Lofi, he's with the Racine City Police Department. Neil does incredible work with this organization, and they do raids at truck stops. It's in high schools, and it's in junior high schools. People have to be aware of your children's surroundings. A lot of these people are graduated students, maybe in their 20s, and they go after students that are 15, 14, 16 years old. That might not be the prettiest girl in school, or she's got lowest self-esteem, and they target these girls online, in schools, everywhere. And that's where this starts.
How do you protect your child from that in this day and age?
Wow. I mean, obviously, you just have to be aware, and it's not always easy, especially the way kids, like you were saying earlier about your 16-year-old. It's not always easy. But being involved, if I had a 14, 15-year-old, I'd be in their face. I'd be knowing what they're doing on the computer all the times. You have to be so involved, almost to, I guess, overprotective.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bets.
And you wouldn't believe how many parents don't agree with that.
No, I understand that.
And I've had to co-parent with a parent that didn't agree with that with my older boys, because we were not together. But we had an incident where one of my sons was definitely having some inappropriate conversations, and when I brought it up, it was almost like I was the bad guy for invading my child's privacy.
Yep.
That was the answer that I got from his mother, and I don't think that it's out of malice. I really think that people are truly ignorant to what's going on out there, and there's not enough emphasis on the fact that you have to monitor your child's activity.
Especially this day and age, Ralph. You're definitely right. And like I said, there's all kinds of forms of human trafficking, but we're just hitting, obviously, the sexual part of it, and the sexual exploitation of it. And it's right in your backyard, people, and you just have to be so aware of it. I've seen it at the end of my career as a police officer, the first 22 or 23 years. We were naive to it, probably. It was out there, but
Sure.
Most of the police officers were just naive to it. Over the last few years, I've learned more since I retired from the police department 3 years ago with the band and with stuff we've learned than I was a police officer. I saw some at the end of my career and started learning about it.
But at large, most of the time when you're looking at prostitution cases, even as recently as 5 years ago, I think that it was being looked at as an individual case, and it wasn't being seen as an epidemic. It wasn't being seen as kids being targeted and dragged into this life. And I think there's a lot more awareness now, but still not nearly enough awareness of that.
Exactly. And Betsy talked about the women that do, or the young girls that do get involved. Some of them, she's right, some of them do want to be, that's their lifestyle. They want that to happen. So when you arrest them, sometimes charges aren't filed because that's what they want to do. But there is a large majority, especially the young boys, that are being exploited. You see stories around the country nonstop now. You're seeing them everywhere. They come out of every state, every jurisdiction. So it's everywhere, and it's an epidemic that it's hard. Like Betsy said, it's hard to put a cap on right now.
I'm married to a school teacher, and it seems after raising, we have 6 altogether between the two of us. I had 3 when we got together, and we've had 3 since. But
busy man,
very busy man. All these years of raising children and being involved with other children and other children's parents, and being involved in education, and me being from the community. All of our friends seem to be teachers and cops. It just seems to be how it works. And so I've got a lot of friends in law enforcement, and one of them in particular has a daughter in high school, and he swears by the fact that his daughter still has a flip phone. He doesn't even want her having access to the internet on her person. And I used to think he was crazy. And the more time goes on, the more I see that, the more I think that's really not that bad of a thought. As a matter of fact, it's probably the right way to go to not have your child have access to technology unless it's in a public space. And that's getting harder and harder to do because the personal computer has gone away even. And it's even easier. There's more of these apps that these kids, in the beginning, they're talking to each other on, and I'm sure that most of it is purely innocent when they're 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, and then, 13, 14, and they start to get a little more curious, and then there's some evil lurking out there just waiting for them to be curious.
Yeah, and they know more about what they're doing than we do as parents.
Sure.
So it's kind of hard to monitor a machine that you don't really know how to, you don't,
I remember in a presidential debate 2-3 cycles back, maybe longer, because I think it was George W. Bush saying something about putting protective software on our computers if only our children would teach us how to use it.
Yeah,
and
that's exactly right.
Exactly.
And that continues to get worse and worse over time. And I consider myself pretty technically astute, at least for a Gen Xer. But these kids are leaps and bounds ahead of us when it comes to that technology.
Sure. So, and going back to the Voices song, which is obviously is a beautifully written song, Joe came up with the riff, and Betsy, they had probably 5 weeks to write the song before the benefit. It was right before Christmas. And Betsy took one of Joe's riffs, and she put words to it, and boom, they had a song in less than 2 weeks, and a couple weeks of practice, and they performed it for the first time. A year later, like I said, we did a video, and if people are out there and want to see the video, obviously wellknownstrangers.com, the website, and you can watch the Voices video. The band let me run with that video, which was really nice. I kind of came up with the concept, and they just let me go with it. And Betsy and I actually directed. But Joe was actually on vacation at the time, so Betsy and I ran with the video. And it was just an amazing thing to do.
Very hard. A lot of work. We kind of had our...
Police chief
I got my police chief involved. He gave us police officers to work with at the end of the video. I casted the local actors, but Betsy casted friends and family. I was coaching softball at Park High School in Racine, and I used a lot of my softball girls for extras. So it was really neat. And the comical thing of this I want to bring up is that the first video Well-Known Strangers did, it cost them almost $10,000 to perform a professional video. And then what is it, 6-8 months later when we did the Voices video, I think it cost us $1,200.
Yeah. Sure.
So, well, because a lot of people were involved that really cared about what we were talking about, and I mean, I remember shooting at like 2:00 in the morning. We went to a motel where there was actually,
this sort of thing going on.
Yes, and so we kind of shot in.
Where was
the thick of it.
Where was the hotel? What town?
It was in Racine.
Gotcha.
I'm not gonna lie to you. It's the Seekers Hotel in Racine. It was a shady hotel at the time, and we shot outside basically.
Those little crap holes that are right on Highway 20 there.
You could rent them by the hour.
This was actually in Racine, more closer to the lake, and a lot of drug use there. I've seen as a police officer. I was called there multiple times in my career. So we used that hotel as the outside shots, but the inside the hotel scenes, we went to a nicer hotel. So we didn't put our actors in that.
You don't want your actors leaving with
Yes.
crustaceans attached to their bodies, huh? Yes. Just for filming a video.
Yeah, I think our drummer really got into character. He was one of the. He played a trafficker, and he got a little bit too into character.
Your drummer played a creep?
Well, John did too.
So did John.
So did John.
John, the bass player, played a creep.
It was a great role. Not yeah.
Because John's definitely.
Emmy
I can see,
award-winning.
with that little smile, that it was probably fun to play. But John's definitely not a creep. But
No, absolutely not.
Hey, there's a song you could do. I know it's a male vocal song, but you could do creep. I mean, that would be kind of.
Oh, yeah.
And John's a creep.
He's a weirdo. What the hell's he doing here? Sorry, John, you're the butt of our jokes. Your first time on. Don't know what to tell you. When you're dealing with a subject this heavy, you got to give it a little bit of levity. Yeah. Well, we're going to go into the bottom of the break here, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about Operation Underground Railroad and human trafficking when we come back. And here's a little more Well-Known Strangers as we go into the break with a song off of their Aligned album, Release Me.